Hi, this is Marco Lerock, host of Marco Lerock TV. My guest today is Mr. David Scott. David, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I know you back in the day from Internations.
Thank
you
you.
did a great job, with that, but today we're not going to be talking about Internation.
That's fine.
So we're going to talk about something also interesting, which is Project Search. So tell me briefly a little bit about what's Project Search and how are you involved with it?
Well, I work at Embassy Suites in La Vista, Nebraska.
And you're the director of sales.
I'm the director of sales.
So you're in charge.
I won't say I'm in charge, depends on who you ask. But I take care of the sales office and top line revenue essentially. But we're a host site. So what does that mean? I'll get to that. But Project Search is a program that began at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and it began as a way to lower turnover because they had a lot of turnover of people getting into the departments they were getting into, then moving on, moving out, or actually leaving altogether. So they started Project Search, which is actually an acronym, which is now stuck, unfortunately. That's why Search...
Is this stuck now?
Well, the program was, it's a project, let's see if it works, and Search stood for something along the lines of, and someone's going to ding me on this one, Special Education and Research Children's Hospital. So that was something along those lines. Okay. So they're trying to find a program that would help them solve this high turnover. So they partnered with a special education organization locally in Cincinnati. Long story short, they developed it into this program which has people with intellectual and developmental needs on site at a host site with a job coach, a teacher, and people from the education world and vocational rehab world supporting the program. And what they do is they get taught different skills, and they work for 10 weeks in 3 different locations within the organization. I'm in a hotel, so it might be in the kitchen for the banquets, it might be actually setting up the banquet space, it may be in housekeeping where they clean rooms or they clean public space, and they're learning the skills from the people who are on the job with the support of the job coach.
So is that like one person that rotates through those different departments at one time?
Essentially a class is somewhere between, say, 8 to 12 maximum. Okay. You may have 2 in one department, you may only have 1, you may have up to 3 or 4. But generally they're on their own, doing their own target role. It could be vacuuming a room, it could be setting a banquet space, that may be with 2 at the same time. And they're taught exactly how to put things in the right place, exactly how to do what's required of them, as any new worker who's learning the program would do.
So how does the program run itself? Is that Cincinnati who, set up the rules, how things will work?
Well, it is evolving, but the Cincinnati Children's Hospital is the headquarters. Yeah. And there are now over 500 host sites around the world.
Oh, is it a worldwide organization?
It is a worldwide organization.
So I thought it was just for the US.
It is mainly the US right now, but yes, it is in Canada and it's in the UK. About 30 or 40 host sites are in the UK, and there are a couple in Australia. And it's a pretty simple program. All you're doing is you're finding a host site of about 150 to 200 people and above, because that has the options available. No industry specific. It began in a hospital, and generally hospitals, and now in hotels there are quite a few. But it's really a hospital program, and they might have, say, up to 10 different rotation options for the students. We have about 7 or 8 in our hotel, for example. If someone goes through regular special education, through federal mandated education programs, the expectation for someone to find a job when they leave high school is between 10 and 30% for someone with a disability.
That low.
Now that's the full range of disabilities, of course. So in this case, we're taking the kids with intellectual developmental disabilities, but they can follow instruction, and they're willing to work, of course. And so they come along, and we've found that the Project Search program itself has a 75% confirmation of finding employment within 12 months of finishing the program.
That's amazing.
It is amazing, yeah. And we're at 83% with about 16 hotels, Embassy Suites, and with our own property about 97%. So it's a program that works, and it's kind of embarrassing that so many other people aren't aware of it. But here in Nebraska, in North Platte, which many people may not know where that is, there is a Walmart distribution.
I know where North Platte is.
You know where that is. Yeah. But yeah, the viewers may not. There's a distribution center for Walmart, for all that supermarket stuff. Okay. They have a host site right there, and they have students that come every day. And then they come back at the end of the day, and they just do a recap of how that went and what they learned for the day, and they do that each day like a regular employee. They're not paid, they're students, but they are still students of the school district or whichever organization they're attached to. And we as a host site, we yes get to train them, but we also get to watch them and select the students that really are making a difference and able to excel. And we've been doing this for 5 years. It's been going since 1997 in Cincinnati, so it's already a proven program.
So when you say you guys select, what are the criteria that you go through to select, like, you know, who,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, when we employ the students after they've graduated, they are the best applicant for the job we're employing. Does that make sense? So we're not just giving them a job because they look good during the year. If we have an open position, we're looking for the best applicant, and those that get the job from Project Search is because they are the best applicant. I want to make sure that that's very clear. The second thing is, so we're looking for criteria that says, yes, I can follow instruction, yes, I'm interested in food and therefore I work in the kitchen, or I'm interested in being making the place special and exact for a banquet space setup. So we're looking for our elements, just as a hospital would look for the things they're looking for. And when we go through the instruction, I think the difference here is when I go through in school level and I'm treated like a child at school and I go through special education, suddenly they have to act like an adult. They have to do what we tell them to do. They have to follow the instruction, and maybe the term is tough love. There's no issue for there's no space for your disability. You can't use that as an excuse. Follow instruction, do what we do, and we'll move forward from there.
So it looks there's so many pieces involved in this program. So I'm trying to understand, like, you know, who oversees everything. Is that still Cincinnati? Is that, like, you know, the hotel host? I mean, who's like in charge of the program actually when a student comes in and starts doing?
Very good question, and it sounds a bit like a mess. I know what you're saying. It is. It really is a partnership.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Yeah.
You've got. If I'm a parent of a child, and my child goes to school, I'm in contact already with the teachers, I'm in contact with their coaches, and they're giving me feedback on how that child is doing. We now agree to put them into this alternative program, which is still a classroom, but the classroom is now at a work site. So now they're committing to things like, yes, I'll be wearing a uniform, yes, I'll turn up at certain times of the day, etc. So they go to that location, and when we go through what their training is all about, they're also selecting to see where they fit in this world, be it this particular location where they're working, or whether they don't like any of it all and maybe want to try something else. And what we found is that actually works in both ways. We're hoping to find people that we'll employ at our hotel, and they're looking at somewhere where they might fit. Maybe it's a kitchen, maybe it's in banquets, maybe it's somewhere they hadn't expected, such as engineering.
So who paid for this program? I mean, this is
probably that's probably the first question. Who pays for it? There is existing funding in place to take care of education for people with special needs at a federal level and a state level. So that same funding is then rebraided into making it work with moving the classroom into a host site. So it's existing funding. There's no new funding. We're not asking for grants or asking for any more money from anyone else. So yeah, that's the best part about it.
So the main purpose of this program, where it started, is that to solve the problem of employment?
High turnover. High turnover
okay.
in an organization.
Yeah,
and so we're a hotel. We have people that may be students, and they come and they work at the front desk, and then they get a job and go somewhere else. We have high turnover in our world. We have a lot of housekeepers. They clean bathrooms, they clean rooms, and they want to do that all the time. So that's a starting job, and they move somewhere else. So. And I'm not saying the jobs that the students are doing have to be limited to just these service-oriented areas. We've had some people work in the front desk area where we check people in. And other areas, I think, are not just the suggested menial. They're all areas that are open to opportunities for them. But yeah, it's turnover that it helps, and we found the same thing. Turnover is lowered. To give you our stats for our hotel, we've had 5 classes go through. We've hired 12 kids over the 5 years, 5 classes, of which 2 have left. So what's that? A bit of attrition of around about 20%, maybe a bit less. And our hotels may be running at, say, 40% turnover. Well, I'm still saving money. I don't have to rehire for those positions. And they stay. They're friends. We become family. We're part of their network. And they're inspiring. The kids you see when they come in, they're lacking a bit of confidence, and they start talking to you, and hello, Mr. David, and look, I got my driver's license, and look, I now bought a car. And
that's a pretty good feeling.
It's when you think of morale for the hotel that we're actually making a difference in people's lives, and we see these kids grow. It's not your regular for-profit organization when you include something like this in there as well.
So, I did watch the documentary that gets put on. It's called Work Their Best.
That's correct, Work Their Best.
Yeah, so what inspired you guys to put that documentary, and what's the purpose of of it?
Pretty simple. I made that a few years back when I realized that people within the project search world understood hospitals, but they didn't really understand hotels. So I said, let's redo this documentary that was already in existence for a hospital-based project search program to show how it would fit into a hotel. And the other side was to also make it more focused on the students and less focused on what does the boss think, what does the supervisor think, what does the customer think. No, it's all about the students in the end. And what I found by making that movie was that it was also a way of attracting people to our industry. Most people going through school don't think about becoming someone who works at a hotel. They want to be a lawyer, a doctor, who knows what it might be, work in a hospital. So that's another way of doing it. And one of the people that was working on the actual movie said, I'm not really attracted to working in a hospital anyway. So, and I hadn't thought of that. That's the part that made me realize here's a different career opportunity. You don't have to be siphoned in a certain area. So that was the exciting part. And the other thing is it's all about transferable skills that these people bring to the table. So what they learn at my hotel, they could certainly do somewhere else, and another potential employer can see that, and they will see that student learning. That will bring benefit to me because they'll say, wow, isn't that great that your hotel's doing that? Number one, so I want to do more business with you. And number two, they might find an employee that works for them.
Yeah.
But back to your point with the movie, the director of that movie also saw the opportunity to have the kids work on the movie.
Oh, I see.
And I've given away the plot now. So here's a documentary about a program. The back end of the movie has them working on the movie itself.
So they were involved.
They're involved in the filming and setting things up. And they then interviewed some of the people making the movie who reflected on the sense of purpose and pride and action that these kids would take in getting that movie done and doing the job properly.
So beside hospital, hotel, what other industry you think Project Search is thinking about getting into in the future?
It is open.
It's open.
And the more you try and restrict it, the more you're going to be surprised. Let me give you an example. Cincinnati Children's Hospital has a nearby sponsor. It's called the Fifth Third Bank. Like in Omaha, Nebraska, it might be like the First National Bank. It's like a major bank within that town. So they became a sponsor, but they also had some people working, and they were checking numbers and checking to make sure things were entered correctly. And one of their students found an error. And the people who were giving him the information to enter into their system said, no, that's not an error, that's correct, go ahead and do it. He said, no, it's an error, I've already entered that number. They found out that he was right.
Wow.
And he actually saved the bank $6 million.
Are you serious?
I am serious. And you say, well, that's... And by the way, the bank now has a dedicated Project Search HR team because they see the benefits. So, these students are labelled with disabilities, but ultimately they have skills.
That's a great story right there.
And that skill is, like in your world, banking and money and finance, it's enormous. And so I think we've barely scratched the surface. I'll give you another example. We had a girl with Down syndrome, and therefore it's an obvious physical disability. And so the first thing was we had people coming up to the front desk, and our front desk manager would ask, Addie was her name, to introduce the hotel. We have breakfast at these hours, and here's when the bar is open, etc., etc. And so firstly, the guest is introduced to the hotel, and this girl with Down syndrome is telling them all about this hotel. And maybe they don't know much about a child with Down syndrome, but now they realize, okay, they can do more than what I expected before, number one. And number two, this girl was doing a fabulous job and making that person's day, because then she might see her the next morning delivering mints at breakfast and saying, good morning, how are you? And that would be wonderful for the individual, because they don't see them in general public. And I think that's the exciting part for me, is that rather than putting people in specialized education, it seems more important to bring these people into the mainstream, so that the people in the mainstream can experience the people with the special education, because they're the ones with the skills that we're missing out on.
Yeah, that's a great point you just made. Yeah. So you're all about making impact. So if you're choosing to change one thing in the world right now, what would that be?
Oh, geez, where do you start with that?
One thing, if you had to change one thing in the world right now, what would that be?
Since we've spoken about disability, 1 in 5 people in the world have a disability. 1 in 4 people in the world will experience a disability in a lifetime. So I think reflecting back on a perspective of it takes a village to raise a child, because you and I might go off to do our work, and the wives and the cousins and the nieces and the nephews all look after all the children. It's same thing still applies. And I think we've moved to a specialist mindset. Let's pass it to the specialists. But yet we all need to take care of the people with disabilities. Yes, we all need to take care of each other. And I think if that mindset of a bit more of accountability, a bit more of an ownership, a bit more of a, you know what, it's up to me and I can do it, if that is instilled somewhere in everyone's mind, I think there's a sense of, yeah, I could help that person. So it's like a paying it forward, but really it's a natural to help someone who needs help, and you get paid back 10 times. So it becomes a selfish thing in the end, because it's a fabulous feeling when you see these people grow.
So where can people find more information about Project Search?
Easy. projectsearch.us. That will take you to the Cincinnati Children's Hospital location. If you search Project Search, you'll probably find many locations, but they've got many videos to watch, which are very inspiring, and they also have all the locations where there are existing Project Searches. Obviously, you don't just turn up and become a Project Search student. You would go through your normal channels within your location, and there may not be one in your location. And I'm also working where I can to open up new host sites to potential Project Search sites, so we've got more people learning and growing.
That's awesome. What would be your last advice to my audience?
Last advice. Oh boy. I don't think you can limit. You need to be open. Don't think that a person with a disability can only do this, because when you set the standards, you'll set it at this and they'll blow you away and you'll be taken up here. So raise your standards. Push it.
David, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marco.